Hey everybody, it's the Dark Guardsman. We're back with another update here on the progress of atomic science. Now I did make a previous video to this, but I decided to go ahead and scrap it, so if I miss anything, that's probably why. But we're going to go ahead and talk about the progress and kind of get a gauge of where we're at currently in the mod. So of course it's Monday here, and the plan is to actually get the update out here Friday, about the 1st. I'm probably going to try to release an update on Patreon. I know I noted this before, but it depends on really where we get at and how I feel about where the progress of the mod actually is. Now, there has been some improvements and changes. A lot of them have just revolved around doing config additions, getting all the settings there so you guys can customize whatever you want, get all this minor changes, tweak it to fit your server, your mod pack, and of course, modify performance values so that way people running lower computers or lower end servers can actually still utilize this mod without a problem. Now, before somebody panics when hearing the performance thing, the mod actually does run incredibly well on low-end systems. The only concern, though, is if you guys have low-end memory and low-end CPU servers where you're running the server on 2 gigabytes of RAM and 1 core, and you might start running into some minor performance issues. Of course, we're going to test this and actually work on that as we go. But some of the changes actually have been done to the actual content that you're going to notice when you actually do download the mod if you have used the last version, is I have started adding more particle effects and some cosmetic changes. And these are really just there because it kind of looks cool. They really don't have much else that they do also act as kind of a visual feedback. We will be having audio feedback as well for how the process is going. So we've got this. Of course, the reactors now put these particles out. It's not too many particles. I think we're averaging about 10 per tick per reactor core, so it's not a huge deal. And of course, your settings on particles will actually gauge how many are spawning. Each core will do this. I do have some more work to do on these to make them look a little bit nicer. Right now we're basically using a smoke particle with the Y motion turned off on it, so that way it's not floating up in the air like you would see with a torch, and it's being colorized. The colors are supposed to be a little bit randomized, but it's a little hard to notice, so I'm going to probably have to work on that a lot more. So this do work and stuff. It kind of looks nice. The only downside advantage of this, it is a much harder to notice when you get into water. I am looking into code to fix this. I have identified a few potential possibilities to solve the fact that the water kind of doesn't really overlap the reactor core, and of course makes it much harder to see these particle effects. You can barely see it through that. Those who running texture packs and stuff may be able to adjust this and actually fix for this by running more transparent water and running shaders and various other things. Of course, if you're in the water, it's a lot easier to see. It does work really well. The disappointing part is that when you get the bubble effect in front of it, you're not going to be able to see that. We can see that, of course, up here with this change as well on these reactors, is that it's really hard to see the effect. I am hoping to implement some more support for various other things like lighting and other effects to kind of make this look much nicer. I may be grabbing some of the effects I use for ICBM, particularly the red matter one with the beams, and see if that would result in a much better result for telling if the reactor is turned on or off. Of course, once again, audio effects are going to be introduced, and of course other blocks will be introduced later on to kind of give you a really good idea when the reactors actually are running versus not running, and everything else. Of course, all the particle effects can be disabled via the configs, and changed and customized and whatever. You can do whatever you want with those. As for other changes, not a lot has really happened with how power generation is done. I still have to work on the funnels to get them to look like something other than just a bland looking block. I know they kind of look cool, but that really is just because the anvil texture, which is what we're using for that, actually has a kind of a really nice looking solid texture to it. As for other things, the processing machines also now have particles to them. I do have a little bit more work to do on these to make them look nice. The extractor is about the only one that has a lot of customization to it. It actually does spawn particles on all 3 different points along the actual rod here. You can actually look at it and you can see it is spawning from the center there. It took a little bit of effort to get that in there. It is rotation based, so it will rotate with the machine. Some more testing, of course, is needed to make it look nicer. There is a running effect and a recipe complete effect. So when this actually does complete a recipe, if I can grab this out of here, we will see a nice dark green smoke pop up. It's hard to see with the running smokes. This is something I really have to work on. I might modify the color here. Right now I'm going with green because it kind of looks nice. It fits the style and aesthetic of the mod with the fact that you're working on radioactive material, and most people think green for radioactive material, even though realistically most radioactive material is actually not green in real life, but it kind of looks nice, so I'm going to probably leave it there. But I might tweak it and make it colorized based on the recipe, so this may have a much nicer yellowish tint because it's doing uranium, and then we'll switch some of these to like a grayer tint because these ones are what's supposed to process the waste. And let me go ahead and grab some waste out of here. And you can see that it is actually rotational based. It does actually work both directions there. The centrifuges also have this ability to, I don't know how to good way to actually show this because we can't get material in here. The boilers also have it. The boilers have a little bit of customization on their running and as well. They have 2 points by which they spawn particles. It makes it look kind of a little nice. Definitely some work needs to be done on the models and animations to kind of make it look even better when it comes to this. Something I'll be tweaking over time. As for other things, there has been improvements on the recipe handling. I don't know if I mentioned this in the previous video or not. It's really hard to tell because I've made 2 recordings now of doing updates that have not been actually posted, so I might be missing things. But all the recipes are now done via objects. This means that anybody who wants to come in can actually make custom recipes now. It's really easy to do. There'll be a lot more API support in the future for this to add as much support as possible. I will not be doing Craft Tweaker for people who ask. I know that was a system that is used often for doing recipes, simply because I do plan to implement a JSON recipe system in the future that will completely remove the need to actually write code to add custom recipes to these machines. As for what recipes you'd probably add to this, it really would just be coming down to adding support for other mods like IC2, Greg Tech, Big Reactor, stuff like that. Although I don't foresee really why you'd be using the 2 mods with each other, but yeah, the possibility is there. Beyond that, there has been improvements to reactor handling. The fuel rods actually do tell you how much time is left on the fuel rods. This is for both the breeder and the actual fission rod. Breeder rods are not actually craftable at the moment. So there's been some recipe fixes as well. So this is actually its proper recipe now. Of course, we can't actually look at the base recipes because they're all vanilla-fied because I don't have a mod installed that actually support the recipes. I'll get to that eventually. We'll be adding thermal expansion support as we go. There has also been improvement to how the reactors handle interaction. I think I might have mentioned this, I don't remember, but these are automatable via hoppers now. We can actually see the example set up right here. This one's actually been running automation. It actually has been chewing through rods and sticking them in there, and it spits them back out. It'll work with any type of inventory support. Hoppers is your most basic version. It'll work with pipes, it'll work with anything. There has been adjustments to inventory size on the reactor. Previously it was supporting 64 items, which is now supposed to do. It now does 1 item. That's fixed a few different problems. The reactor cores also chew through the rods properly, so they'll actually decrease them properly. They won't go negative anymore, and they will stop running when these hit the bottom. A cool feature is that when you get the rods in the cores and they actually start to chew through, the most dead core will always go to the bottom of the stack. So it actually has some logic that when you have cores in here, it will actually put them to the bottom. We can actually test this by pulling these cores out. So I have a dead core here, I have a live core here. I'm going to put the live core in here, put that in there, and if I right click, I'll get that somewhat dead core back out. And we can see how it shifted down there. It will also push cores down depending on how many cores you got in there. So you can literally just put a hopper on the top of this and all the cores will slide in. As soon as the core is dead, it'll pop out of the bottom via hopper, so you can empty that and recycle those cores. And you don't have to be in the reactors to get this working. I'm not going to build any complicated mechanisms for this in the future. I know some people would ask if I build a machine specifically designed for this, because that's what they do in real life. Is there's some machines and some tools in real life for this, but the reality is in real life the most simplest reactor, actually they just take a rod and they push all the cores out of the one side of the reactor. There's a human being that does that, and it pushes down into a draining basin, and that's literally it. That's how they actually empty the reactors. There's nothing complicated. So I'm just using gravity in this case, although I have added a bit of magic to that concept that the rods can switch places based on the amount of usage that they actually have. Beyond that, really not a lot of major changes. A lot of been a lot of polish work. There's a lot of things about the GUIs, like we have translations now in the GUIs. Almost every single item has a translation to it. I'm starting to get into doing tooltips for some of the items. It'll be eventually, we'll get down that. I have next lined the animated cells. I still do need to work some more on the actual animations and textures here. These are being procedurally done. There actually is a piece of render code that actually does render these, so these are not manually done per thing. So that's why you end up doing things like Strange Render not working. Strange Render is not supposed to be supported in a fluid cell. And a few other things, and that's about it at this point. So I'll come back here with more information about the mod, what progress we're doing, and hopefully some tutorials here soon when we start doing the beta release. The beta release is scheduled for the 1st here, but if I get enough content done and enough polish, I'll put a version up on Patreon for people to start testing. And of course, people who are in the Discord, I will be tossing versions to you guys whenever I get an opportunity.